Hey everyone, it's Simon here from Aquabatics again. If you were here on Saturday, you're probably like thoroughly sick of my voice. However, I'm really thrilled to be here with Mike Harvey from Bad Fish. So I'm going to bring him on the screen here, and we're going to sort of have a wide-ranging chat about stand-up paddleboarding in Colorado, the origins of his company Bad Fish, which he's a co-founder of, and all manner of other things. So we're going to bring him into the screen now, and we're going to get stuck into it. Hey, Mike, how's it going, man?
Hey, what's up, Simon?
No, you too, man. You too. So tell everyone where in the world you are right now, Mike.
Yeah, well, I'm here in our warehouse in Salida, Colorado, and us actually, our little shipping bay is right behind me here, and we've got a little warehouse store that's in front of me. It's closed right now, like everything else, but so I'm here in Salida and just riding it out.
So let's tell everyone a little bit about yourself, I guess. So as far as, where you come from and a bit of the origin story of Mike. So where'd you grow up and how did you get into this whole paddle sports / surf game?
Yeah, well, I grew up in the hotbed of surf culture, Cleveland, Ohio. I grew up in Ohio till I was 18. And when I was 18, I graduated high school, and the guy that was sort of my mentor in high school was a raft guide on the Arkansas River in Colorado in the summer times. And he was like, I was going to come to move out here anyway. I have a bunch of family from Colorado. And he's like, hey, you should come out and be a whitewater rafting guide, which I'd never done before in my life, but sounded, I had no other plans. So I drove out 6 days after high school graduation in 1993 and drove into Buena Vista, Colorado on the Arkansas River, which is about 26 miles upstream of here. And within like probably 2 weeks, I was like, yeah, I'll probably just do this the rest of my life. It's like, it was the best, I lived out of a little Subaru wagon. I learned to kayak. I just loved it. I loved the people. I loved the whole concept of, I met all these people that were ski patrollers in the winter and raft guides. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that whole world existed. And so, yeah, I actually, after a couple of years, had an opportunity with two of my friends to buy a raft company on the Arkansas. So we went from, that was my first introduction to running a business, which, I barely escaped with my life, but I did sort of pull it off a little bit. Owned a raft company for a little while I was in college. And then, and the whole time for me, my passion just became whitewater kayaking, and obviously I got into it at a really interesting time where, whitewater kayaking, the boat design and everything was really just starting to take off. And so it was a lot of fun to ride through that like late, mid 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, where the boat designs were changing so fast you couldn't barely keep up. And, just tons of whitewater kayaking. And so then let's see, when would that be? Yeah, late 90s, 98, 99. I decided with my soon-to-be wife to settle in Salida, which is a cool historic town, 7,000 feet above sea level, about the midpoint in the upper Arkansas River Valley. So like a bunch of whitewater upstream of us, a bunch of whitewater downstream of us, but right in Salida. The reason Salida is where it is we had a huge rail yard, like 100-acre plus rail yard, and it was a depot. We were a railroad town historically. And, so they built this really cool historic downtown with brick buildings and everything. But they just trashed the river right through Salida. So the Arkansas through Salida was sort of like this straight flood channel with, not great access. And it was, I always describe it as it was sort of like out Salida's back door. You didn't really people put fences up to keep people away from the river. Everybody thought it was dangerous. And so for me, being at the time really a hardcore playboater, I wanted to be able to, go throw ends on my lunch break or whatever, or, go kayaking after work and, not have to drive all over the place. And so I decided I was going to figure out how to build a play spot in Salida. And that that's a long story, but basically through that process, got to know a guy named Gary Lacey, who's a whitewater park designer. Yep. And went to work for him and over, I mean, boy, we just built another new drop this last fall. So it's been like a 20-year journey for me building this whitewater park here in Salida. We got the first feature built in the spring of 2000. And we've added features over the years and trails, and it's completely transformed our little community, you know. And now the river's right in the what's up, Jason? Is right in the out the front. It's out the front. You know, it's out our front door now. All the buildings have literally turned and now face the river.
Yeah.
And so it's been fun to be a part of that process. So I'm circling here very slowly to Bad Fish. So
that's all right. We'll get there, man. We get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah. So in the mid 2000s, we built a whitewater park in Pueblo, Colorado, which is downstream on the Arkansas. And, at the time we were obviously, when you were designing a whitewater feature, you're thinking about kayakers and, building foamy holes and the sorts of features that kayakers like. And I kind of accidentally built this big green wave that came in at higher flows. And I was down there one time, this is around 2004 or 5, something like that. And I saw these guys out surfing this wave on surfboards. And I was sort of aware that existed, that there was river surfing certainly predates any of my involvement in it at Big Sur or on the Colorado River here. Yep. Or up in Jackson Hole, the lunge counter wave, and certainly in Canada, there's a well-established river surfing culture there on the Kananaskis and other places. And so I was aware of it, but I'd never really seen it in one of these parks that I was designing or considered that possibility before I saw it in Pueblo.
What year was that? Around what time was that when you first sort of started to see it, Mike?
Yeah, it was mid 2000s. So I think, I believe we finished the park in 2005, and I bet that was like 2006 or 7, maybe.
Okay.
And so I called my buddy Zach, who's a kayaking friend of mine and a guy that I had a bunch of kayaking adventures with in the 90s and early 2000s, and he had settled in Salida as well. And Zach grew up in San Diego and was a surfer. And so I knew he had surfboards. And so I was like, hey, we should come down to Pueblo and try this. I sent him, or I don't know, maybe were we texting pictures in 2006? Maybe
I don't think so.
I probably just called him and said, hey, people are surfing here. And so we went down there together and we pulled out all the surfboards out of his garage, and we kind of had this surf session. And right away he could just rip, and I was just a flailing, swimming mess, but we surfed together, and and I did manage to get to my feet a little bit, and right away, because Zach's he's kind of an artist. He's just like a natural design engineer, and right away he was like, I think we could make a better board, because these ocean boards, they're too thin, they don't have enough volume, like they're bogging down a lot, and he had just had an idea for how these boards could be better. And so he started shaping boards in his garage. Actually, I got one right here. I'm going to take a little tour and show it to you.
Nice.
But he started shaping boards in his garage and out of blue board home insulation. So,
okay.
This is actually one of the very first Bad Fish boards right here.
I'm going to give you the full screen here, man, so we can see the whole thing better.
Yeah, I'm like,
there we go.
I can't figure out which way the camera is supposed to pan.
There you go. You're going the right way.
There it is. So nice. You can see this thing's like, you can see it's made out of home insulation, glassed in fins, but he started making boards like that in his garage. And you can see like right away, he was calling them Bad Fish. And the reason was because you can see that's a high-tech logo there. Yeah, hardware.
That looks like a stencil and some spray paint for sure.
That's exactly what it is. So the reason he called them Bad Fish was because they were sort of based on fish designs. These
Right.
boards that we rode in sloppy surf in California in the 80s. But they were mutant fish, they were bad fish. And so that's where the name came from. Well, so anyway, he started making these boards, and they were just really hard for anyone else to ride besides him. He was a surfer, he was really good at it, I wasn't. And so, getting your feet in these tight little river waves on these little short boards was very difficult for me. And I was kind of like, not giving up on it, but not really that interested. And then a buddy of mine, Earl, who used to own CKS here, Colorado Kayak Supply, he turned me on to stand-up paddleboarding. He was like the first guy around here to bring a stand-up paddleboard on the river. And right away when I saw it, it was like, in my mind, it clicked between what Zach was doing and this new, stand-up paddleboard that Earl had. And right away I was like, oh, if Zach made a board based on the principles that, what's up, Rita? Based on the principles of what he's doing with these little short boards, like I just showed you, but he, made it bigger where I could stand on it in the eddy and paddle out of it like I was kayaking on my feet. And I was like, then I could surf, and I was like, man, that would be really cool. It'd be, I wouldn't have to mess around with getting from my stomach to my feet. And yeah, so that was the winter of 2009. And it just so happened that we got a grant at the same time for the city of Salida to build 2 new whitewater features. And so I was like, well, maybe I had these ideas for how we could try to make waves that were surfable on boards instead of for kayaks. So we built these 2 waves that winter, and Zach built these boards, these 2 stand-up boards that became what we now call the River Surfer. One for him and one for me. And, and I would go by, he lived like a block away. I'd go by in the evenings in the winter and drink a beer, and we'd talk about it. And it was this whole big, cool buildup. And then we built these 2 features. One of them's called the Office Wave now. The other one's called the Scout Wave. And then around this time, like late April, early May in 2010, the water came up just enough that the waves came in. And I took the board that he'd made me, it was sitting in my garage, took it down to the river, and I paddled right out of the eddy onto the wave. And my very first time, it worked exactly like I hoped. I could stand there. I didn't really know how to surf, but I could stand there and I could get from the eddy onto the wave. And I just surfed for, I don't know, like 15 minutes. No one was around. I just stood there, like, woo! Yes. I was just so fired up. And I called Zach right afterwards and was just like, hey, I really think other people are going to want to do this. And, not knowing even the smallest thing of what I was suggesting we do, I just was like, hey, maybe we could start a company and make these boards and we could work together on this project. And, so that was 10 years ago, exactly 10 years ago. And it was, we've been through a fair bit of learning since then, and stand-up paddling's evolved a lot too, and we really started from that river surfing perspective. And I've been on like I've just been talking for like 20 minutes here. So it's
all good. All the comments are good. They're all like stoked to hear the story, man. And that's what it's about, right? So it's like, so that I spent a bit of time actually in the valley there in the Arkansas Valley. I worked for Buff Joe's for a few years, and we have some mutual friends from that. So, like, totally. What raft company did you work for when you first came to the valley?
Yeah, I worked for no. They imploded while I was working there, and it was called Rocky Mountain Tours.
Okay.
And they imploded. That's how we ended up buying a raft company. We didn't buy that one, but they were blowing up while we were working there. And there was an opportunity to buy another permit, and my friends and I were just sort of cocky, young guys, and we were like, well, we could do this at least as well as these guys.
Yeah, totally right. Yeah.
It's a junk show, so we bought the company and we ran it. We didn't have an physical location, so we would meet our customers at the put-in, and then we would wash our wetsuits. The customers, wetsuits we give them, we'd wash them in trash cans at the car wash, and we'd only wash them like maybe every like fourth day.
So gnarly, so gnarly. And it's I think it's hard unless you're in Canada, unless you're out on the Ottawa, maybe the Kicking Horse now. It's hard to wrap your head around what a rafting culture there is on the Arkansas in that neck of the woods. When I worked there, I rafted in a whole bunch of different countries and rolled into BV, and it was just, whoa, like it was crazy. It was so intense. There was just hundreds or thousands of raft guides there in the summertime, and just giant companies running thousands of people down the river. And it kind of blew me away because there was this weird sense of community that I hadn't experienced before. And I think that's partly why maybe this whole Bad Fish in that area works. But did they have, when you were raft guiding, did they have church dinners there? Did they have the BV church dinners?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Dude,
totally.
That was crazy. Like, and you'd go, and all the raft guides would be half drunk, most of them, and then you'd go and eat
charity case,
dude, and you'd go and eat free food at this giant church with the nicest people serving it, and then you would go and have the most vicious, ruthless games of volleyball in the backyard, and there'd be fist fights and everything. It was it was nuts, and
there was a lot of like especially in the early days, there were ranchers that opened up corners of their property for raft guides to stay on.
That's right.
It's different now. It's a little bit more organized and a little more, like what you see on the Ottawa or in West Virginia. Yeah. The companies are bigger. They have to provide some housing for dirty raft guides, but
right.
Yeah, it was more of that in my day for sure.
Because I camped, the BLM land on the other side of the river in BV. Like I lived there for like a whole season. I just moved my tent once a week. It was awesome.
Yeah, Cogan's.
Yeah. Cogan's. Yeah, dude, it was nuts. It was great.
It was like Burning Man, but every night of the summer.
It was definitely some good times. And so, people who haven't been up there, if you're from Canada and you haven't been down to the Arkansas Valley, whether you're into play boating or whether you're into, running super burly creeks or whatever, it's kind of got everything. And it's all in pretty close proximity. So you're certainly in a pretty unique part of the world.
Yeah, we've got, now we have the Whitewater Park in Buena Vista, which we did just after the Salida Park.
Yeah.
And then, a whole development has grown up around that called South Main, which was started by a kayaker named Jed Selby and his sister Katie Selby. Yeah. Yep. And so there's an amazing, they brought the downtown to the river there, where in Salida, the downtown, the river already ran through the downtown. Yeah. And so we had we have a lot of variety of paddling here, and great world-class class 3-4 paddling, as you say, some creeks. But it's 300,000 people paddle the Arkansas in some way, either through a commercial raft or privately on an average summer. So it's a big destination. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's about 3 hours from Denver, right?
That's right. Yeah, 3 hours from Denver, a couple hours from Colorado Springs. Yeah. So we're a pot. And the other thing we have is that we sit on the east side of the Continental Divide. And of course, in Colorado, most of the snow falls on the west side of the Continental Divide. Yeah. But all the people live on the east side. So the Arkansas is a conduit to take water from the west side, the west slope, and move it to the east. And so we have very consistent flows here. Much more so than most rivers in Colorado are unrunnable. And then, a season when the snow melt happens and then unrunnable again. The Arkansas is runnable year round because they're moving water basically almost constantly from west to east.
Yeah, it's really quite similar in a lot of ways to where we are here in Calgary. And it's one of the things I wanted to chat to you about is that it seems like we're on the eastern slope of the Rockies here, so we're kind of that front range, lower snowfall, lower volume rivers and that kind of thing, where you move west and you go to Golden or Revy and that kind of thing, and you get a lot more snow. It's sort of, exactly. Again, it's the same as your situation. However, what really intrigues me is that your area, your neck of the woods, has been kind of, in a lot of ways, has been the birthplace of modern river stand-up paddleboarding, and that obviously started with Earl back in the day, and you guys in parallel with you and Zach kind of doing the surfing thing. And so we have a pretty frothing crew of people here in Calgary right now. We've got Adlai Majer, and then we've got Rita and her crew of people. And before this whole like COVID-19 thing, I can't go through a full interview without mentioning it. It's terrible, isn't it? But before that, we were, we'd obviously been chatting with you and some of the local brands to really not push, but really promote river stand-up paddleboarding. And so there's so many parallels. What do you think were the key factors? Because really, the Rockies rivers are not necessarily the best designed for River SUP, right? So what was it about Earl and you guys? Like, how did that get rolling? What was the secret sauce, I guess?
Well, and so I'd be remiss not to talk about Charlie MacArthur, CMAC, we call him. He's a world-class instructor and paddler, kayaker here he's actually from Aspen, Colorado. And he was really, I would say, the true pioneer here in Colorado. And actually on our new, we have a podcast we're doing now called the Bad Fish SUP Journal. And the very first episode I interviewed CMAC. And so if you check that out, you can find it on Apple and Spotify and Google and wherever you get podcasts. That first episode, we talk a lot about that with CMAC. He was really one of the big first pioneers. Also, my friend Ken Hovey, who's known as Hobie, also real early adopter here in Colorado. But I think what you have, because you make a good point, Simon, it's like Colorado, the rivers are, shallow, rocky, swift. We don't have eastern like drop pool rivers here. So it doesn't strike you as the best place to, say, yeah, I'm going to go, stand 6 feet above the water and hopefully not fall. But, the truth is Colorado is this place that it's an early adopter state. So any outdoor recreation thing, people are very quick, whether it be snowboarding or mountain biking or whatever over the years. People are quick in Colorado to pick up a new activity and embrace it. And that happened with stand-up paddling. And I think, part of it too is that what we found right away, just using my family as an example, my wife grew up in near Aspen, Colorado, and she learned to kayak when she was like 14, 15 years old. But she was always really, really scared, and she was held back by the fact that she didn't want to roll, didn't want to flip over. And certainly once she flipped over, she didn't want to mess around with rolling. She used to pop her skirt when the boat was like barely not flat. And so she had just sort of given up on river running other than in our raft. And then with stand-up paddling right away, there was a whole bunch of people that came back to doing easy class 1-2 river runs because the stand-up paddleboard had a lower barrier to entry and a shorter learning curve. And it's like a little awkward. You have to learn to balance on it. But at the same time, you could just go to your knees or whatever. It's so user-friendly. So I think a lot of it was bringing people who wanted, to do those evening river runs, but not be in a kayak. A paddleboard was a reason to get out again. So I think that was part of it too. And then, we do have we have sort of a well-established tour of events here that starts in late May and goes through June. And they're all canceled this year, sadly. But, so we had a competitive circuit that we could just sort of plug stand-up paddling into. And people like Dan Gavir and Hobie and CMAC and, us, we all, and Earl, we all sort of we're quickly figuring out events and trying to generate some interest that way. And, now it's cool. We have people that come from all over the world to do these events, do these races at the GoPro Mountain Games. And here our local event is called FIBARC. It's actually the oldest whitewater paddling festival in the world. It started in 1949. And so, so the events have helped, but I think the fact that it's just ingrained in Colorado that, people will embrace a new outdoor activity before other parts of the country. It's just, I don't know why.
Yeah. It's just that Western colonial spirit or something. You guys made it, your ancestors made it a long way across the country before they gave up.
Right.
To go get a spirit, right? Yeah. So, and I guess that leads me just to an totally off the cuff question. So for you, for stand-up paddleboarding or for river surfing, and obviously the water's bloody cold in the springtime, and that's when the paddling's the best. Are you a wetsuit guy or a dry suit guy?
Well, both. I wear wetsuits when I surf, for sure. And I tend to run a little warm, so I don't get cold that easily. So I'm a bad person to ask sometimes, because sometimes I go with less than I probably should wear. But I wear a 3-2 wetsuit. Lots of people wear a 4-3. So that's
3-2. That's pretty fit.
3-2 means it's part of it's a 3 millimeter wetsuit, part of it's a 2 millimeter wetsuit. 4-3 is a 4 millimeter combined with a 3 millimeter. I think 4-3 is probably warmer in runoff, and some people even go warmer than that, you know. But a 3-2 works for me most of the time. And then I wear a dry suit if I'm gonna really try to go run some whitewater and I'm gonna be out there for a few hours. I wear a dry suit almost more as a safety precaution than anything else, because obviously whitewater stand-up paddling, you can take some long swims. And if you're wearing a dry suit, that's not a big deal. And if you're not, it can be. So I do wear a dry suit a fair bit, but I also will, right outside the warehouse here, we're in the middle of this little town run we do. It's like 4 miles and class 1, 2. And I do this run all the time. And even in the winter, sometimes I just wear almost nothing because stand-up's weird, it's either hot or freezing. Yeah. It's very, it's not like kayaking where you're getting constant splashing. I mean, if you're running a class 1, 2 section of river on a paddleboard and you're just out there getting exercise and you don't fall in, well, you almost could be wearing nothing. But so sometimes I wear just a thinner layer or, something on my bottom, like some neoprene tights under some shorts or something. Cause if I go in and I might just go to my knees on the board and get wet, but yeah.
And what's your go-to? Are you, if you've got a half day to kill or half day or a full day to kill, which is probably pretty rare for you for the most part when the rivers are running, are you going to choose to go surf like a big wave, or are you going to go choose to run a river and go on an adventure? And you've got to choose one. You can't say both.
Oh, man. Well, my thing is, like, I've always been, since I started paddling, which has been like 27 years now, I've done, like, if we went to my house right now and I showed you the ridiculous collection of stuff I have, I mean, it's silly. My wife is not impressed anymore, but I've done almost everything. I mean, I've paddled, C1s, I've paddled slalom race boats. I got really into wild water, which is downriver racing in kayaks. I have some wild water boats. I have, and it's the same with, I just like to change it up. I really like variety in my paddling, and I like to do different things all the time. And so if I was going to pick one thing at this point in my life that I like the best, I really like paddling downstream on faster boards. Okay. Just like even the one that's right behind me, our new board, this Selfie, which is this 14-foot board that my partner Zach designed for self-support paddling. I love paddling that thing on a river. It's so fun. And like going fast and trying to find the fastest line is really good. That's also because I'm getting old, dude. And got to keep the belly in check. Well, yeah, totally. Fitness and but I mean, river surfing's pretty magic. And when it's in, I go river surfing. The thing is that, my everyone's better than me now at river surfing. So
it's harder to motivate.
Yeah, I just mostly hold the camera anymore. My kid is really good, and even all my team riders, everyone's better than me now. So I just take pictures.
Kimberly had a question. So for you, and we're in the cold. We're in the north. Kimberly's in Canada. What do you recommend? What do you wear for footwear? I know Brian Owen's on here, so he'd probably like a plug for Astral shoes now. Which I'll give
I only ever wear Astral shoes.
Yeah, Astral all the way, Brian.
Yeah. Oh, Astral shoes are awesome. The one shoe I wear, like if I'm going to go run some whitewater and try to stand up through some real whitewater, I love the Astral. I think it's called the Rustler?
The Wrestler, yeah. The Wrestler's got a big kind of thick sole on it and lots of really good grip.
Yeah, and just really good protection,
Yeah.
for my feet. I like to wear a flat shoe as much as possible. So like I don't want a big thick heel. But I mostly wear shoes. I do wear wetsuit booties when I'm surfing. Unless I know that I have to do some kind of epic scramble back upstream on rocks, and then I sometimes I wear shoes, because you go through like 6 pairs of wetsuit booties a season if you're doing that. Very much. And I used to go barefoot a lot, but I don't recommend that, and I don't do it ever anymore. It was just like early on when I was kind of cocky.
Yeah. Just young and getting after it, right? Like totally.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So next question. You mentioned Miles. So he's your son. How old's Miles now?
Yeah, Miles is 18.
Oh, correct. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's a man, and he lets me know it. He just is really lucky because he got to, so we started 10 years ago. He was 8, and he got to come along for the whole journey with us. He's particularly lucky because Zach really was inspired for years there he got very interested in surfing at a very young age. He started river surfing, and he just loved it. And so Zach started shaping him all these little custom boards over the years. Yeah. So when he was little, he had these boards that proportionally fit him, which allowed him then to do all this stuff. And so he started figuring out tricks on river waves when he was really young, and sort of, was able to sort of come up with a bunch of different tricks. He did a lot of surfing with a paddle initially, SUP surfing.
Okay.
And then he started shortboarding more, and now he mostly shortboards unless he's in a contest. He'll SUP surf, but he can do just a dizzying array of like kayak. It's kind of a cool mixture of kayaking and skateboarding, and so he does like tricks that sort of look like a kayak blunt, and tricks that look like a pop shove it on a skateboard, and lots of different spin combinations, and just things that are hard for most people to do. But he just had the right formula. He had a shaper making them amazing boards. He had we were building waves, and he was getting to ride them, and just kind of came along, and he loved it as the main thing. He's got a real passion for it. So it's been fun. And now he's getting ready to he really found surfing in the ocean through river surfing, and he's super passionate about that, and really wants to go live by the ocean when he graduates high school, and surf a bunch. But been fun with my kid.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. So with that, so for parents out there who have got, there's more and more people who are into stand-up paddleboarding. There's more and more people that are kind of transitioning onto doing it in the river, especially in our neck of the woods. As their children get into it, obviously we don't want to scare them, and different kids have different personality types. But with the surfing side of things with Miles, would you think that it's easier for a young person, like an 8, 9, 10, 12-year-old, to learn to surf with or without a paddle?
Yeah, I would say without a paddle. And I mean, Miles was he started kayaking when he started sitting inside my cockpit when he was 2 years old, and I would take him paddling. And then he started paddling his own boat when he was 4. So he already had an understanding of working the paddle. But most kids that we teach now, we teach without a paddle. And what if you watch a surf instructor in the ocean? Oh yeah. Nikki, I know Miles is my kid. He's better looking and a better athlete than me, so I can see how you can confuse it. But you see a surf instructor in the ocean, right? And they push their student onto the wave, right? They get that glide, and you can do an experienced instructor in the river can do the same thing. So you can get in the eddy and float around and get your hand on the board, because obviously getting across the eddy line and out on the wave is challenging. And so you can put your hand on a student's board and make sure the leash is out of the way, so you don't yank them back off. But you can actually swim the student onto the wave. And that's how we started. That's how I started teaching Miles to surf. I would be in the water and I would push him out there and he would surf. And then I would stay in the water and I would kind of hang towards the back of the eddy as they're little and they're maybe not the swimmers, so that I can even come out if I needed to and help get them over. And I did that for a while. The other tool that's awesome, do I have one here? Yeah. The other tool that's awesome are bodyboards, so getting kids into river surfing on a bodyboard. And we've got one coming out. They were pretty serious. The production on them was real seriously delayed by the coronavirus in Asia, but we'll have them by this summer at some point. And so bodyboards are a great tool as well.
Yeah, true story. You don't have to worry about the standing up thing, right? Like it just makes it easier. Yeah. And you can get to your knees and that sort of thing. Because I grew up surfing in the ocean. I don't even really remember learning to surf. Like I learned when I was 5 or 6 years old, right? And so it's hard to wrap. I'm sure, like the kids around here, we have these big kayak programs with loads of kids between 7 and 12 or 13 years old, and I think they'd have a fantastic time with it. And on the Kananaskis here, we actually have a couple of little waves that are really, really good for learning on. And it's one of the things I'm trying to wrap my head around is how to get the kids out river surfing and giving it a try as a complement to kayaking. So on that note, this is a question Rita and we've discussed this a bunch. And so when you look at the industry and your industry, because it's so niche right now, right? There's you guys, and then there's some other people that have come along over the years, and the products are developing and they're coming along, and I feel like you guys are at the cutting edge of it all. With how you're growing the sport and how retailers like us are trying to grow the sport and clubs and communities, what do you see as the strategy? And this is a genuine question for you. For me, is do you see it as taking people who are already river people, like already whitewater kayakers, and kind of switching them, or having it as a complementary thing? Or do you see the strategy for long-term growth in River SUP being taking people who aren't river people yet and taking the accessibility component of it and getting them into the sport? Or is it's probably a combination of both, but it'd be nice for you to speak to that, because you guys have obviously put a bit of thought into that over time.
Yeah. Well, it's both. Obviously it's both. But we also know, as business people, we know that if we're only converting existing whitewater paddlers, then there's a ceiling to the appeal, because we know that whitewater paddling is, while it is still growing for sure, it's not meteorically growing, and so we do want to interest existing paddlers into using this other tool, because it's fun and it's a fun way to complement your kayaking, and they also have so many of the ready-made skills to do it. So it's a very short learning curve. If you already know how to make an eddy turn, well, now you just got to figure out how to do it on your feet, But the long-term growth of the sport is going to be taking people who are interested in it and maybe start on a lake, and then introducing them to the river. And because it is a really great tool for running down a river, if you just forget about the upper end of it. I mean, that's a very small percentage of people that will ever be really interested in running like class 3 whitewater and on a stand-up board. But class 1 and 2 is very approachable for a lot of people. And it's a neat adventure for people. It's a neat way to, we all know why we love river running. I mean, the magic of just traveling down a river, so for getting people exposed to paddling rivers, I think paddle boards are a good tool, and inflatable kayaks certainly are as well. But a stand-up paddleboard feels better, than paddling an inflatable kayak. You're standing up, you got a better perspective, you can see things, you can. It's such a neat thing the first time, if you can recall the first time that you stand up and you're all of a sudden you've been seeing moving water from this height of your kayak cockpit to your head. And now all of a sudden you're seeing it from your, full standing height. It's a pretty neat thing. And I think it's appealing to a lot of people, but the key is to make sure that they understand that, that we're not talking about the crazy high end of it, that we're talking about, moving water rivers that are very approachable, that people can learn with a very minimal amount of instruction from someone like yourself or a local shop, and not get into whitewater SUP is this crazy fringe sport, because it is on the high end, but it doesn't need to be for, 85% of the people that ever do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the things. I got a question from Robin we'll address here real quick. But for us, we have the Bow River here in the city of Calgary, right, which is really our best spot to stand up paddleboard, because we have lake communities which are private. Our big drinking water reservoir, Glenmore Reservoir, you're not allowed to stand up paddleboard on. So the reality of it is you have a couple of small sloughy kind of lakes close by, or you've got to head out to the mountains.
Sure.
And so with that in mind, like for people here in Calgary, I think the path of least resistance is getting on the Bow River. And that kind of segues into Robin's question here. So Robin's local to Calgary, and she's working towards becoming a river instructor and all that kind of, and going down that path and working with Rita and stuff. And so this is a really good question, because I think a lot of people do see it as like, oh my God, this is this big scary thing to do. But what would you say to Robin in response to that question there?
Yeah, Robin, it's a good question. And the number one thing to build your confidence is you guys in Calgary have a great resource in the Harvey Passage, in particular in the, what do you call the side channel there?
Yeah, just the low water channel, the right-hand channel.
The low water channel is an absolutely perfect place to learn to be a whitewater stand-up paddler. And what you really want to do is just do, and I do it all the time. Like the last time I went stand-up paddling, all I did was I went to our local slalom course here in Salida, and I just do drills. I just go do what slalom kayakers do, watch what they do. And maybe if they have like a 5-gate course, you shrink it down to a 3-gate course, because that's plenty challenging for stand-up. But it's all about just drilling those standard moves. So S-turns and peel outs and, ferries and, just drilling. You can learn so much with like just 2 offset eddies. That's all you need. And if you have slalom gates, it's even better, are there gates on that channel? And
there are. Yeah, absolutely.
The slalom gates for me, that's the ultimate tool. That's where I learned everything and not that I'm some kind of world-class paddler, but I just have practiced a lot in slalom gates. And so I still do it. That's the number one thing I do in the spring is I just go out. I try to go out once or a couple times a week, and I just do little, loops, we call them. So you do like 3 gates or 4-gate sequences, paddle through the sequence of gates, upstream through this one, downstream through that one, upstream through that one. And then I turn around and I attain back up and I go opposite through each of those gates. And I start again at the top. And I'll do say like 3 to 5 sequences of those slalom gate loops. And it'll take maybe 40 minutes, of fairly steady paddling. And it just really sharpens your skills. And it also teaches you, for whitewater stand-up, the thing that happens for a lot of people, and there's a blog post on our website that can help people if they want to look at some ideas about foot positioning. But what happens to a lot of stand-up paddlers who go to the river is their feet get locked in, and they're not really moving their feet very much. And it's so important in whitewater stand-up to be shifting your feet position. And so everyone has a natural surf stance, and then obviously the parallel stance with your feet pointed along the long line of the board is a natural position for people to stand. But you have to learn to stand in your unnatural position. So for me, I'm goofy foot. So I stand right foot forward when I skateboard or snowboard or surf. But when I'm stand-up paddling, I very often am standing regular foot or a staggered regular foot position. So that would be my other advice to Robin or anyone else, is that drill that offside stance. So for me, if I'm coming downstream and there's an eddy on river right, I catch that eddy in some sort of modified regular foot stance with my left foot forward. If I'm catching an eddy on the river left side, I'm going to be in more my natural goofy foot stance. And so when I first started whitewater stand-up paddling, I was only ever catching left eddies. And so you got to learn to be able to sort of switch your feet. Mike Tavares is one of the most naturally ambidextrous paddlers, and he's a really good instructor as well. He has a website called rivershred.com. And Mike T was the first one that really made me understand how important it was to switch your stance, because he was always swapping between, goofy foot and regular foot.
Nice. Yeah. Very cool. One of the other things, Robin, here in Calgary, Mike Holroyd, he's the provincial coach for Alberta Slalom Canoe and Kayak. They go out, they're out there running gates most nights or many nights of the week, and lots of the local stand-up paddleboarding crew, Adlai from Kootenay SUP, they do a group night on Thursday nights or something like that, and they started just like running gates with the slalom team, and just doing an improvised version of it, and they're super welcoming. Mike's an amazing guy, and he's an amazing coach, and it's so nice because they set the gates and you kind of have a crack at it, and if they need to be changed a bit, you can switch them around, and you can also learn from those guys how to set the gates up, because the gates are always retracted because they're a flood, like it's a hazard if the river floods. Oh, sure. So getting to know, they're a bit intimidating to look at the first couple of times, but if you want to get down there on a quiet morning or a quiet evening when no one's there, you can actually move the gates yourself like fairly easily. So yeah, you'll see Mike and the crew there hopefully this summer if we're allowed to do anything, and that's a really good opportunity for sure.
And if you don't have slalom gates, slalom gates are obviously not available everywhere, but if you don't have slalom gates, you can mentally set up a course. If you just have maybe some midstream boulders and some offset eddies, the key with what slalom gates really force you to do is to approach eddies from a particular angle, and so that's all you really want to do, is to change up the way you approach an eddy. Slalom gates will teach you to whip into an eddy higher, to make your turn earlier, and like, since we're talking to a bunch of Canadians, I'll use a Zamboni analogy, but it's like, when you're paddling on a river, you're like a Zamboni. You can't just make some precision turn, right? You're always gliding downstream past the turn. And so slalom gates, I think, teach you how early you really need to initiate eddy turns. And you can do the same thing with just rocks and, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a question here from Maddie, who works with us. So what are some fun games and activities you put into practice? We've seen working with younger SUP paddlers on flat water, 8 to 12-year-olds. Any ideas?
Yeah. So I'm not a professional SUP instructor. I've just done a lot of it at demos and working with people. And I just end up, whenever I'm out paddling, I just end up, handing out equipment and helping people. I'm a facilitator, but I'm not as much an instructor. So the stuff I have done is, just like games like, sharks and minnows and things that, like, naturally, I mean, what you're trying to do with that age group is, like, they don't want to do drills, so you can't do drills with kids like that. You have to do, like, well, Madison already knows this because she's saying, sorry, Madison. Yeah. Yeah. So she's saying fun games and activities. And that's the key, is like, you got to make it fun. One that I just learned about that sounds pretty interesting, I'm going to try this summer. And this came from my business partner, Luke Hopkins, who's the third owner of Bad Fish, and he's based in Asheville, North Carolina. Okay. But Luke came up with a concept. He had an instructional business in North Carolina for a number of years, and he came up with this concept of the world's longest SUP. And the idea is that if you set one board in the water and then you set the next one with just the nose sitting on the deck pad or tail of the one in front of it, the boards will actually stay connected. And you can line up like 10 or 15 boards that way and make this sort of linked board, and then try to get all the kids on there and get them all paddling in sequence and try to get this thing to move around the lake as one unit. And then if somebody falls and it just starts to fall apart, that's fun too. But so that, I've heard that's one I've heard about. I haven't tried it yet though.
Have you tried Gladiator, Maddie? Which is exactly what it sounds like, is you just get them to paddle like full speed at each other. It's like jousting on SUPs. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Yeah. Best to have something padded to put on the paddle, but it depends on how much you like the kids, I guess.
You guys you in Canada, you got, like, there's no ski area boundaries. Nobody's getting sued. You can play those good old fashioned rough games like that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the other thing that, one of the things that I've noticed with Bad Fish over the years is, you have an incredibly passionate and enthusiastic team, right? Obviously, Miles has kind of been front and center since he was a wee lad. But you got Mike and you've got a whole bunch of other crew. Like, do you want to give us a bit of a rundown about how that kind of evolved? You know, because there's a lot of people out there often that are looking to get involved in that sort of team environment. How did that sort of grow? And maybe give a shout out to the crew.
Yeah, well, shout out to the crew because they're the best. And you know, it happened really organically for us because, for example, Mike Tavares, who was actually our first official team rider, which, you know, didn't mean a whole lot back then. Like, yeah. Mike didn't get a tremendous benefit package from being an early Bad Fish team rider. But he was just he lived down the street from me in Salida. He was a raft guide, kayak instructor, and he was a really good skater. And I just seen him snowboarding and skating. I was like, man, this guy is like talented. And so he was actually the third person ever to ride a Bad Fish board because we built these new waves and we were down there surfing. And I called him up and was like, dude, you got to come down and try this with us. And he just right away was so good at it. I mean, he was like, he was basically a pro, whatever that meant, a pro stand-up paddler within like 2 months. He was really, really talented. And so Mikey T and then Brittany Parker was our other first team rider. And Brittany's story is funny from my perspective because Brittany is, you know, she's a little person. I don't mean like she's short, she's small. Now I feel like I'm insulting Brittany. What I'm trying to say. So we were over one of the very first seasons. We were over on the Colorado River near where Brittany grew up in Glenwood Canyon, and we were running laps in this whitewater section. And there was this little girl, Brittany, in just like the most beater equipment I'd ever seen. Like she was wearing like she worked for a raft company, but she had no gear of her own, so she was wearing like a customer.
Nasty wetsuit.
Yeah, customer PFD, and like her booties looked way too big on her. And she had this giant waterlogged board, and she was running laps on like Class 3 whitewater by herself. And she's like 5'2" and like 110 pounds or whatever. And I'm like, man, this woman is tough. And we went paddling with her, and I was like, we probably better sponsor her, or she's just going to end up like drowning because like, this equipment is so subpar, and she is so committed to the game. So Brittany became kind of our other first team rider, and she's worked with us for years. And then we've just been lucky, you know. And like Rita Boychuk up in Canada is who's now grown into, she's a team rider, but she's grown into a role as a sales rep for us. And so I don't know, we're just really fortunate. We've attracted some really good people that are passionate about paddling and have hung with us through all the ups and downs. And you know, and we're all in a down right now, right? I mean, it's hard. Yeah. You know, it's hard. We had to send out a really difficult email to our team this spring and just be like, look, you know, we can't do much for you right now. We're trying to survive this whole situation. But our team is hanging tough, and we're lucky. They're great ambassadors. They're all really just good people. And that's the thing is that we look for is just people that are awesome ambassadors in their community, and are because this is a newer sport. We need people we don't just need people that are rad. I mean, that's only worth so much. We need people that really will like take their equipment and hand it to somebody else and help them have a good experience. You know, that's one of the things that if you end up in an eddy with Mike Tavares, he will like stop traffic for you to make sure you're getting a fun ride on a wave or making sure you're having success. Like he'll just go out of his way to make sure that everybody's having a good time. And that's sort of like the standard that was set for our team, and everyone really that we've added since kind of is that same type of person.
That's super cool. Sounds like these might be other side conversations. It sounds like I'd really like to dig a little deeper into Brittany's side of that story. I think that'd be kind of a fun conversation.
Differently than me, but that's how I remember it. I was just like, oh my God, this girl is like, she's gonna get really good at this or die trying.
Sounds like the right kind of personality for
it, by the way. She got good at it.
That was the result. And so, like in a normal year, your ambassador team, so Mike and Brittany and the crew, like what are their roles within Bad Fish? So what do they do? Obviously they go and compete because they're highly competitive and, you know, top level athletes. What else do they do for the brand, and how does that work for them?
Well, some compete, some don't. You know, it's
Okay.
like, yeah, there's people on our team that aren't into it, and we don't. You know, competition's fun, and it's fun for all of us, but it's only so important, really. I mean, most people don't care at all about some race somewhere, and so competition is fun, and we support athletes that want to compete and compete at a high level, but that's certainly not all of our team. And you know, so we try to do is like we try to find out how can we help an athlete achieve what they want to do with the sport, and then how can they help us in something that we need help with. And so we try to find those partnerships. And then team riders, most often the ones that are the most active, you know, grow into other roles with us, and so they, you know, help us with social media, or, you know, help us with sales, or whatever. But I mean, we're really just looking for people that are really stoked and are excited to get other people excited, because, you know, this isn't a sport where, I mean, if you're, you know, like, without any ego, I can say that my son Miles is one of the best river surfers anywhere. But you know, that and $5 will get him a cup of coffee at Starbucks. You know, it's like it doesn't really it doesn't amount to very much. And so Miles' value to the team is if he can get other people fired up to learn to river surf. And so that means that, you know, sometimes when he's at the wave and the crowd gets big, like, he doesn't need to just go out there and shred. He needs to step back and help other people. And if they're on the wrong equipment or their stuff's not working right for him, maybe he needs to even hand his board to that person and go, hey, try this. You know, and that's really what we're looking for. And you know, and actually that, I would say that we were inspired partly by Eric Jackson and Jackson Kayak. You know, you look at what those guys have done for whitewater kayaking, and, you know, EJ is maybe the most famous whitewater kayaker on the planet, or close to it. And like, everybody knows his name, and he's probably met 90% of them, but he can't possibly remember everybody.
No.
But he always gives everybody, treats them like a fellow paddler, and offers advice and help. He'll get out of his boat, help somebody outfit their kayak. And I watched EJ do that over the years, and I thought, you know, that's what I want to do. I want to be like EJ, where it's like, you know, you're a superstar. I'm not a superstar. I didn't mean to say EJ. I did not mean to compare myself to EJ, but that portion of what he's done for the sport is really inspiring to me.
That's really cool. And are your ambassadors, like, one of the reasons I ask is we've just freshly created an ambassador team this year, and I'll give it a shout out to Lee Vincent. She's our volunteer team manager right now. Nice. We were paying her with Bad Fish boards, but we couldn't. So she ended up paying for them, and she invoiced us back. So we're going to pay her for her help at the end of this season, hopefully. So are your ambassadors sort of spread far and wide, or do they all come from sort of one geographic region?
No, they're pretty spread out now. We, you know, obviously a lot of them started from people we knew that were based in Colorado, and we still have a strong contingent here in Colorado, but we have athletes all over the place, and we have two team riders in Japan.
Oh, wow.
We have Rita, as well as Kimberly Kenyon. I haven't even had a chance to meet Kimberly yet. I can't wait to meet her. If you're watching, Kim, can't wait to meet you. But we've got some Canadian folks. And then we've got team riders in the East Coast. We also have one of our most active team riders is in Iowa, where they have her name's Hannah Ray J, and she is awesome. She's a really cool, a really good river surfer and whitewater paddler that travels around the upper Midwest paddling. And so, they kind of find us and we find them wherever they are. And we're trying to, we're trying to keep bringing in young kids that we can support, and because everybody's getting too old.
Yeah. We age out. We age out of relevancy, right? Like, you just look at it. One minute you feel like man, Yeah, I'm pretty cool. I always thought I was going to be maybe it's similar for you. I always thought I was going to be a cool dad. My 10-year-old daughter thinks I'm totally not cool at all. Like
Yeah,
at all.
no,
Maybe a
it's
little
a
bit.
shocking transition. You were a cool dad. It's just that like you couldn't help but stay frozen in this one period of time.
Yeah,
And
you know, but then if you progress with it, you kind of look like a dork anyway. You've kind of got to own. You got to own where you are. You're just done. You just got to
that's
accept
so
that your
cool.
kids don't think you're cool. It doesn't matter who
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah,
Right.
like if you're the dad with a TikTok account, you're just embarrassing for your kids. Don't do it. Yeah,
Yeah, do it. Oh man. All right. So we're nearly at an hour. I have a couple of quick fire questions before we shut it down. All right. So, and I want you to be honest. The the best and your least favorite product that Bad Fish has ever released. You got to balance it.
Oh man. Well, the best. I mean, I'm pretty keen on this board that's behind me, the
The
selfie.
selfie.
Yeah, I got the chance to do a 165-mile self-support trip with the boys on this thing this fall. And Zach is really the inspiration for this board. He's done just hundreds of, him and Mike T, another one of our team riders, Bradley Hilton, have done hundreds and hundreds of self-support miles on various boards, on some boards that Zach shaped specifically to do some of these missions, and then later some inflatables, and then this board. And I got to go this fall because I had that time to do it. And man, that was so cool. I mean, just like I've done self-support kayak trips, but a paddleboard is one of the coolest tools to do a multi-day trip off of. You're very comfortable. You can stand up, sit down, you can get to your gear easily. And we just did a punishing trip. Like Mike Tavares made us paddle like close to 40 miles a day. And it was fun, but it was punishing, and that board did really well. So maybe I'm just really excited about it, but it's been my favorite thing recently. My least favorite, oh man, how honest should I be?
Gotta be honest, man. Come on, give us the dirt.
Well, this is a double-edged sword because we made a board. Our early years, we did production through a licensing agreement with a company called BoardWorks.
Yeah.
And that's like a whole nother live stream to talk about that situation. But that ended in 2017, and we made a board for years there called the MCIT, the multi-chamber board. It was like a ducky with that you stood on. And it was really, it helped us so much because we sold a lot of them, and we it really helped us get going. But I think I can say now that like that is a design that hasn't aged well. If anybody out there has an MCIT and they want a new board, come see Simon and we'll work out a deal where we get you a good deal on a new board. But the MCIT was, it was cool, and it was an interesting idea at the time. It just didn't age very well. And, it held water in the middle of the board. So sometimes you'd be paddling in like ankle deep water. And but I don't paddle the MCIT very much anymore. Let's put it that way.
We sold a few of those boards, and they did okay up here. That was the most awful board bag ever. That was the taco bag. Yeah. It was the taco. It was like the burrito board bag.
Yeah, that didn't work. But that's what happens when you're early in an industry, right? You just try stuff, and we tried. I could take you guys upstairs and show you some of the history boards in Bad Fish history. And Zach, for a while there, he was pumping out like 20, 30 prototypes a year. And, you just stand back and let him try whatever. But, man, a lot of those boards did not work very well, because it was just all new, and then folks can come along behind and kind of pick up on what worked and what didn't work. And, that's what they say, like the pioneers always get shot with the most arrows.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Well, yeah, because you're totally flying blind, right? So let's finish it off. One more question. What is it that gets you, like, especially now, what's going on now, like, I've said a few times on these interviews, is like getting out of bed in the morning. Sometimes you just get out of bed and you kind of sit there, and I'll sit in my truck before I come into work and just go, all right, what are we going to do today? What's going to inspire me today? What is it, now or in a more normal time, what is it that motivates you and Zach and the team to just continue driving and moving forwards in really a sport that is so niche, right? Like, you're not becoming millionaires out of this. Let's face it. You're doing it for a passion.
No.
You're probably sunk pretty deep into it as well. Like, some days I feel like that. You're like you're pretty committed. But what is it that keeps you going? What is it that gets you stoked? And what is it that gets you up in the morning?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's 100% connection with other paddlers. I mean, that's what it is for me, and I think it is for all of us. Is, in my other job doing whitewater park design, that's also what I like. I love the community planning part of it, because I go to these places around the country where we're designing a whitewater park. I'm working with a town in New Hampshire right now on a whitewater park there, and just getting to know paddling communities. And I mean, I haven't. The next like bad person who's a paddler that I meet will be the first. I love having friends all over the place. And that those connections have come through paddling, and Bad Fish has enhanced those connections for me. And, so I feel like I'm going to go to Japan someday, and I have all these friends in Japan now that'll show me a good time, and, come up to Calgary. Did I say it right? Calgary?
Don't say that. It's not Ari. It's Calgary. Calgary. Calgry. Calgary.
Yeah. It sounds like a person's name, like Calgary.
Yeah.
But like just the connection to other paddlers. That's what keeps the passion for me. I'm probably unemployable in any other industry anyway. Like, what am I going to do?
Yeah. I hear you as well, man. I hear you as well. It's as this thing sort of started to kick off, I was like, oh man, if this all goes south, what am I going to do? Like, I'm totally unemployable.
Yeah. Oh, it's a fact, So what are we going to do? Gut it out.
Just gut it out to retirement. Well, man, I think that's a fantastic way to wrap it up. That whole community piece obviously shines through with Bad Fish and the team. And so thanks for doing what you guys do. And thanks for committing time and energy to Canada and the rest of the world. And we'll all get through this, and we'll be laughing about this hopefully in a few years' time. So thanks for taking the time, Mike. Really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll be here same time, same place next week, and we'll let you know who we're interviewing soon. So thanks again, Mike, and thanks everyone for tuning in.
Take
it
care.
easy, guys. Cheers.